Hello everyone and welcome to Rapid MMA. This is the first edition of many called Rapid Picks, where I'll give brief technical analysis for upcoming fight cards and give my picks on who might win. For cards such as this one, all my picks will be available to see on UFC.com/fantasy. Make sure to check the description below for the link and compare yours with mine. Leave a comment as to why you may or may not agree with the decisions I've made, any information I've overlooked, or to engage with others in the MMA community. This week on Rapid Picks, it's UFC on Fox, Dillashaw vs. Barao 2, one of the most anticipated rematches of the year between two elite bantamweights for UFC Gold, which takes place this Saturday on Fox. From top to bottom, this card has plenty of notable fighters and tight matchups, so let's get started. The first fight of the card is a welterweight matchup between Ultimate Fighter Jones vs. Sun and contestant Zach Cummings, who will face UFC newcomer and CAS MMA's welterweight champion Dominic Steele. Steele has much more of a brawler style, and he likes to use the overhand right, which will play to his benefit since Cummings is a southpaw, but Cummings will close the distance and work from the clinch very well. I think he'll try to take this fight to the ground, where he'll probably have the edge over Steele. And although Dom is a tough, gritty fighter, I think Cummings will pressure Steele in the grappling exchanges and secure a submission finish in the second round. So my picks, Cummings via submission in the second round. The second fight on the early prelims is Jessamyn Duke versus Elizabeth Phillips. UFC Fantasy Picks claims this is a tight matchup, and maybe it is, but in my opinion, I think Duke has a very good shot at securing a victory. Assuming Duke has worked on her previous flaws, if she's able to establish her range and counter Phillips coming in and use her kicks to keep her at bay, Duke can find her chin and get the knockout. Phillips keeps her hands low and her chin high. This is an open invitation for Duke to win. Duke, knockout, second round. The third fight in is Ramsey Nijem versus UFC newcomer Andrew Holbrook. Holbrook trains under the tutelage of UFC vet Chris Lytle. 9 out of 10 of his wins come by first round submission. In the little footage I've seen, I can say that there isn't anything in particular that stands out in his skill set, and the fact that he hasn't been out of the first round poses questions about his cardio at 29 years old. The speed, grappling, and striking of Nijem are all things Holbrook probably hasn't experienced before. If Nijem stays focused and avoids getting too careless with his striking, he'll be able to get back in the win column. Nijem, KO, round 2. The last fight on the early prelims is Darren Cruickshank versus James Krause. Cruickshank should be the faster and more athletic fighter, moving in and out to avoid the larger shots of Krause, using kicks to the body similar to his fight with Eric Koch, and perhaps using his wrestling to get in close when things get wild in the exchanges. I don't see either fighter getting knocked out, and I imagine it will be a grueling 3 rounds, so I chose Cruickshank via decision. Kicking off the Fox card prelims is Eddie Wineland and Brian Caraway, an interesting matchup of a light-footed, versatile striker in Wineland and a composed striker-grappler in Caraway. Wineland will look to set the pace early, using feints and footwork to set up his strikes as he usually does, and Caraway will look to offset this timing with his reaching strike to close the gap and get into a grappling war, where Caraway is likely to have an advantage. Wineland was knocked out in his previous fight, so that does leave lingering questions about his chin, but I don't think Caraway will be the one to test it. I see this fight going the distance in Caraway's favor, so I chose Caraway via decision. Next up, Kenny Robertson goes against MMA veteran Ben Saunders. Saunders should look to keep Robertson on the outside within kicking range, utilizing his Muay Thai style to avoid the wrestling. And even if it does go to the ground, Saunders will look for submission opportunities to either get a finish or work his way back up to the feet. I see a lot of clinch work in this fight. Saunders works excellent in the clinch using knees and elbows, so I see Saunders winning this fight via KO in round 2. Nearing the end of the Fox prelims, we have Jim Miller and Danny Castillo. Miller is a heavy favorite on the fantasy picks, and for good reason. Miller seems to have a better overall skill set, especially in striking. He's much more refined and usually finds a way to land punches and elbows in the pocket. He also has a ton of submission wins, but for the most part finds himself in the hands of the judges. Although Castillo has looked better over time with his striking, I think Miller's experience will be the determining factor in this fight. Both fighters have been caught in the past, so it'll be interesting how this fight plays out. I'm taking Jim Miller via decision. This brings us to the featured preliminary bout between Gian Villante and Tom Lawlor. I think Tom Lawlor will keep striking exchanges to a minimum and try to get Villante against the fence, where the fight will probably stay for the most part. I think Lawlor's attempts to get this to the ground will keep him ahead on the scorecards, so I'm going to take Lawlor via split decision. Finally, we've hit the main card with the first fight being one of my personal favorites. It's Joe Lauzon versus Takanori Gomi. Gomi's going to throw heavy, and this is the main thing that Lauzon has to avoid, but also capitalize on. When the opening is there, I think Lauzon will secure the takedown and wrap Gomi up. Gomi is tough and he's experienced, so I'm not counting him out, but I think Lauzon can take it if he plays his cards right. Lauzon, second round submission. Another very exciting fight between two versatile strikers. It's Barbosa and Felder that will kick off the co-main and main events. Barbosa is light on his feet, he's very technical and very quick. Felder also has these attributes, but tends to be a bit more composed. Similar to Donald Cerrone, this is a very tight matchup and I'm going to go out on a limb for this one. But I think if Felder is able to counter Barbosa's explosive strikes as he's coming in, Felder can take this home. Again, this pick is a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to go with Felder with the knockout late in the first round. Finally, we've reached the co-main event of the evening, and it's rumored to be a title eliminator bout. Of course, I'm talking about Miesha Tate versus Jessica Eye. The thing I've noticed about Jessica is she's very quick, she has much better head movement than most of her opponents, and she doesn't have much trouble finding her range. Both these girls are going to rush to the center of the octagon, with Miesha initiating the grappling. The thing about Miesha is that she always eats heavy strikes coming in. I think as the fight goes on, Jessica will be able to keep the fight standing and land strikes both in and out of the clinch. It's going to be a great, bloody fight. Jessica Eye moves up the ladder with a decision win. It's the main event that many of us fight fans have been waiting for. Dillashaw and Barao going at it for the second time, with Barao looking to take the belt back to Brazil. I think this fight will be much more competitive this time around, with Dillashaw still employing the same side-to-side movement, using his punch-kick combinations to stifle Barao. I think Barao will use lateral movement to cut off the octagon and heavy leg kicks to impede Dillashaw's footwork. However, Dillashaw will probably use his wrestling more in this fight, especially heading into the second and third rounds. As TJ attempts to drain Barao's gas tank, rounds 4 and 5 will be his to take. I don't see a finish in this meetup, but I do see TJ winning a unanimous decision victory. Thank you everyone for watching. This has been Rapid Picks. Don't forget to like or dislike, but more importantly, please engage in the comments section and make your argument for the picks you've made. Follow along with my fantasy picks by clicking the link below, and thank you again so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.